Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Chris from AppSumo and the Remote Work Academy, and I'm super excited to have everybody joining us today. And I have Mike Moll here, who is going to be giving you guys a ton of value. Before we dive into, and I need to stop rocking this table because that is what I keep doing. Got to keep my hands off it. That's what they tell me. Um, Two things. There will be a replay sent out for this. So I know we're going to be going over a lot of things. You guys are going to get a lot out of this. If you miss anything, you got to pop out early. I know everyone's super busy these days. We'll get that replay out to you so you can check out anything you missed there. Number two, if you have questions for Mike, drop those in the Q&A box and we'll circle around to those towards the end to get all your questions answered. We're going to be going through a lot of stuff in terms of like how you can acquire clients, how you can give value, maybe some unique ways that you might not have thought about before that could be particular to what's kind of going on now in the world. So lots coming at you. Let me introduce everybody to Mike before we get going. So Mike is the founder of Social Media House and a digital marketing consultant who teaches marketing and social media strategies to executives and their teams, from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. Constantly striving to provide his clients with simple and cost-effective solutions to optimize their online efforts, Mike's gained a reputation for using lean marketing to get business owners up to 10x their ROI. Driven by his passion to help other entrepreneurs develop scalable strategies to promote their brands, Mike launched the Market Me podcast. Mike sits with the founders of companies of all sizes to discuss their business goals, current marketing strategies, and new strategies that they're considering. From there, he dives into practical ways to optimize existing techniques and develop new strategies that will help them move the company forward. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. I feel after hearing it read, I'm like, man, I made that way too long. But
No, man, not at all. You've done a lot, you do a lot, and I'm looking forward to kind of going into that. But I would love to hear kind of like the background before we go into what you're doing now, what you recommend for people. It's like kind of let's build out who Mike is.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I got started in the marketing game about 7 years ago. I completely fell into it by accident. I was actually doing a risk assessment for an insurance company for 6 years before that.
Oh, interesting.
Horribly depressing job. I was very entrepreneurial before that, but it was a really depressing job. And just about before the 6 year mark, I was sitting outside the office. I reached for the door handle and my body just started to tremble. And I was like, there's something seriously wrong. Didn't know what it was, called my family. I was like, guys, I don't know what's happening. I got some good advice. Obviously, find another job and then leave where you're at. I was like, you know what? That sounds responsible. That sounds like the best way to do it. I'm going to do that. And then as soon as I got out of the car, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to quit right now. So I actually quit on that day, and they were what they were about it. But yeah, and right after that, sitting on the back porch, no job, a little bit of savings, I decided to start a software company. I don't know why. It just sounded like a good idea. We were going to be the grocery shopping robot that was going to change the world. It didn't work out. Flip took us out. But it was cool. I mean, I think we learned a lot. We did the Canadian version of what you guys have as Shark Tank. So it was kind of a fun experiment. We building the software and all that took a really long time, and we got a bunch of early money in from people that wanted to advertise and that kind of stuff. And while the software took too long to build, this is the marketing spin, is that we knew it was going to take forever. We knew they were sitting with budgets in our pocket saying like, what's going on? And so I was like, hey, I'm going to take a risk here and I'm going to ask you to let me do marketing for you. And they're like, well, we've already kind of written off the budget anyway. So I YouTubed how to do Google ads. And really the rest is history. I just kept learning more and more. It was pretty much all YouTube. I ended up buying a bunch of courses. I ended up hiring a bunch of people off of clarify.fm, like asking them for advice, like picking their brain for periods of time about how to do it. And I kind of got lucky. Like it naturally clicked for me. For some reason, like marketing and product strategy really clicked in my brain right away. But, I was a dropout of university. I lasted a year. I don't learn with books. It just doesn't work for me. And so I was always like the sense of nervousness of like, is that going to hurt me? Am I going to be able to do anything with my life? And then I really found like the thing that I was meant to be doing. And so it's been 6.5 years since then.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. That's inspiring too, because a lot of people, I think, probably fall into those types of categories, especially if you're in this kind of space where what you're doing is probably atypical from what your friends or your family are doing or the experience you have. We had James Clear on yesterday, and he was talking about basically how like he didn't have any entrepreneur in his family. He didn't have any entrepreneurial friends, and so it was very like vague. You don't know what you're doing when you're getting started. He was like, the best I had was like a friend who was a DJ. And so
Yeah.
when you don't have that in your background, and then at the same time, you kind of learn differently than everyone else. So like not being somebody who can learn through books, maybe learning better through experience, like that can just make you feel like even more of an outsider, like you have more obstacles to overcome.
Yeah.
So that's super cool, man.
Yeah, and I think burning through the 80K of savings that I actually did have to launch the software company taught me everything to not do. And I was like, oh, okay, don't hire too many people too quickly. Don't do this. Don't, if somebody says I'm in or I'm going to purchase until they've actually purchased, don't count it as any. Like all these like little nuances and things that we burned through a lot of my personal savings, and that was my education, truly.
Yeah. Hey, that's cheaper than business school.
Yeah, it's true.
One of the things I'd love to go back to is kind of like the quitting. I think that's a really interesting thing for people. That's something that I did when I was getting into this. I was similar to you. I was working not in insurance, but I was working at at BlackRock, an asset management firm in Boston, and I was basically very low on the totem pole there. And then I had this opportunity to go work for basically a startup for free, and I was just so miserable there. But that kind of that anxiety and that fear of the unknown and trying to like amp myself up to be like, is this the right decision? Is it not? What should I do here? Like, it seems like I got something nice and stable and it's boring, but I also have this opportunity that's super risky but exciting. Like what was that mindset for you? How did you go into that? What were the decision-making elements that played into it?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's not that my family my family's like kind of like middle class, and they don't have like money, but we've never like worried about money before. But one thing that I always prided myself on growing up, even from the time I was like 12 and 13, like I always made my own money. I left the house at 17 to go to school. I never took a dime from anybody ever. And I lived as if there's no possibility of getting money from anybody at any point. So I kind of had that mentality. And really, if I had to move back in with them, I could have done that. But I wanted to I had my mindset determined to avoid it, because I didn't have entrepreneurial role models. I didn't really have a lot of people in my family that were doing that I could ask questions or look up to. And so for me, when I quit, I was absolutely terrified. It didn't make any sense, but my instinct was like, this is the right thing to do. I think what I learned very quickly, when you learn about your life burn rate, which is like your rent and your phone and your internet and all this stuff, I think the one thing that I pulled out of it, the most valuable thing, is you just have to do stuff. And if you spend 10 to 12 hours taking actions and moving things forward, things will happen. Now, they might not happen at the speed, they might not happen at the scale necessarily that you want them to happen at. But if you call 1,000 people in a week and ask them for business, you'll get some. But you got to do it. You got to just dive in, and you need to be relentless, and you can't stop. And I think going into the headspace of like, if I don't do this, then I have nowhere to live or I have nothing to eat. If you act and stay in that mindset, like it becomes very easy to pick up the phone and be rejected a couple hundred times. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Cortez strategy. You gotta burn your boats. You can't have an option to just default back into. And I think that's one of the reasons why like right now is a really important time for this type of stuff, where it's really, and I'm probably said this on every single session we've done, but I think now is just catalyzing people to action in a way where it's like there's so much opportunity, but at the same time, it's like you really got to be taking action. Like you can't, all of the plans that you've been making or all of the ideas about how you were going to start something, it's like that's great, but I think people, especially when you're getting going, they overvalue the planning aspect and undervalue just the taking action. Like you were saying with, you can spend $80,000 building a software company before somebody's ever like paid you, as opposed to like what Noah and what AppSumo and like what we really try to stress is like, you need to do this as quickly as possible. So like get that transaction, get people buying, set up your MVP and your minimum viable product. So like you can see if you're on the right path before going so far down, before you're ever getting that real world feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in the middle of it right now. Over the last 18 months, we developed a product. So we don't want to do marketing for small businesses, but certain small businesses could market themselves if they had the right tools and they had the right structure, right? So we teach
Hmm.
people, we set up an account for them. We teach them all the way through on how to do it. We give them a deck, but they end up coming through us with a full campaign. And then they get support calls after to like figure out how to manage the ads. Well, that doubled our business very quickly because people are like, yeah, one-time payment. I get to learn everything. I can take control of my marketing. Well, I'll tell you, as a marketing agency, like all 38 leads we had in the funnel, all gone. You
Yeah.
know, 60% of the marketing retainer clients gone. So, that's even now. It's all the time. And so for me, as soon as I saw it starting to slow down, I was like, you have to go into, okay, how do I get a hold of 10,000 people now? How do I get a hold of 3,000 people right now? And what's my angle based on the certain, what's going on? But I mean, you just gotta move. You gotta take action. If you sit there and dwell, oh, well, my business is going down, I'm losing clients. So what? Go make more money. Go. Like
Hmm.
you have to just constantly be moving. If you want to be an entrepreneur, that's what it takes, right?
Yeah. Do you listen to any of Jocko Willing's podcast or things like that? Or he's just like, hey, you want to stop eating sugar? Stop eating sugar. You want to know how to wake up early? Wake up early. It's just
Right.
so much of it is a lot simpler than people like to make it, and we all
Yeah.
want to have it be like our unique situation is the reason we can't do it. And it's like, I mean,
Yeah.
you can think that way, but also it's like it's not going to help you. And of course, you need to take into account that there are challenges, and everybody does have their unique things. But when it comes down to that personal, like, do I just keep making plans, or do I take action? And Jake, I see you in the comments. I've seen you in a lot of these. Awesome to have you here. I would love it if you were taking action. Let us know what the biggest thing standing in your way is right now, and maybe Mike has some advice for you. So what would you say to somebody who kind of wants to start getting some clients, maybe even their first clients, whether they're, say, a copywriter or a digital marketing agency, an ad agency, or at least that's what they want to go towards. Maybe they're like a one man or one woman shop. How would they get that first $1,000, get that first client?
Yeah. So I think my mentality with the podcast, with all of our marketing, with everything that we do, is really leading with value. I know that's a term that gets really thrown around. Like, I think it's, I think unfortunately it's been thrown around way too much over the last year. Value, and everyone's like, okay, great. What does that mean? To me, it means think about, if you get into the mind of the person who's going to pay you to do something, you can very easily reverse engineer a yes. And what I mean
Mm,
by that is, do you know how many, as a business owner, do you know how many emails I get from copywriters, how many DMs I get on LinkedIn from accountants that all want, oh, change this, use me, hire us, switch from this guy to us. Like, why? I have no incentive to do it. I have no motivation to do it. You've given me zero reason by reaching out to me. So I think thinking about ways to make that person's life easier is the number one way to get into a business if you want work. And how do you do that? You do have to lead with value. So making their life easier can come in a lot of different ways. You can give them free, you can create copy, like take a look at some product that they have and write a blog about it, or write some piece of material about it, rewrite their product descriptions, rewrite one of the sales pages on their website, send it to them, say, hey, I think there's a strong chance that this is going to do better than what you have. I'd love for you to split test it. If you feel like it's better, and if you feel like it's worthwhile to talk to me after you use it and prove it out, then I would love work from you. So you can be upfront about wanting work, but don't expect just because you're the one reaching out, like there's 300, 400, 500 other people reaching out all at the same time. And a lot of times with the templated script of like, hey, I saw your blog on, like, it's obvious. We know as
mhm.
business owners, we know when it's a template. And so I think, taking the extra time, leading out with something, and you don't have to do a ton of free work. You don't have to, I'm not going to put in a month for free, but you could send them something where you feel strongly about it, show them that you know what you're doing, and then let them decide. You're still going to get a bunch of no's. But I, in my opinion, picking the top 20 people to go after and doing a quality piece of work for them and getting them to hire you is easier than finding 100 or 200 and mass blasting, hey, give me some work. I know
Yeah.
as a business owner, the people that I've bought from via cold email or cold DM have all reached out with personalization, hey, Mike, checked out your Instagram. Your climbing pics are awesome. I really think I can bring value to this. I want to do it. It's, risk-free. If you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. And I was like, great. That's incentive enough for me to move forward. But reaching out generically or just sending a bunch of resumes out, it's not going to cut it. There's too many people fighting for the same money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like a shotgun approach versus a laser approach. And you can just do all this scattershot stuff where you're doing just this huge wide-ranging net without any real substance or depth. Or you can pick, like you're saying, the top 10 or 20 companies or clients or people that you really want to work with. And instead of spending 20 minutes putting together an email, spend 2 hours actually doing something valuable. I think that's so underrated. And we were actually talking about that with AppSumo, because one of the things, like when we're hiring a copywriter, once we've like reviewed their resume or had a call with them, what we do, like the next step in the hiring process is, okay, have them write a piece of deal copy. Like take a product and write it, and then we're going to compare that to what the actual product copy looks like that we created. And if it's better, then we're probably going to hire you. And so if you can, like you're saying, getting into the mind of the person you're going after, it's like, well, if they were to hire you, how would they prove that you could do this job? And maybe you just get out in front of it and you're addressing that right off the bat. So instead of being like, well, let me see your resume, let's get on a call, and then you get the opportunity to prove your value. It's like, start with that value first. Be like, hey, you have this copy on your page. I wrote this copy. See if you like it better. And then it's like, oh, okay, you've immediately, like, all the other stuff doesn't matter at that point. I don't need to talk to you on the phone. I don't need to see what your resume looks like, because like all of that stuff is leading to this. So you're kind of cutting to the end of the line there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know, do you do hiring within your own side on AppSumo there? Like, do you personally deal with hiring on your side?
Yeah.
So I actually had this conversation on a podcast last week, and the person on the other end was shocked to hear this. I've looked at probably close to 1,500 resumes. I had a team of 25 salespeople in a marketing agency that was like my side thing while I was launching the software. That's how we were keeping the money coming in. And I had a team of 25. I hired them all. I hired over 100 people into that company, and I never spent more than 30 seconds looking at a resume ever. Couldn't care less. Mm-hmm. If it was one page and then you made like your description of yourself made it seem like I would want to talk to you, I was like, cool, go. Couldn't care less about your qualifications. Couldn't care less where you went to school. Couldn't care less where you volunteered. I don't care. I don't have time to care because there's so many resumes coming in. And so that's something people don't generally know, but like, and I don't know if you've experienced the same thing. I'm like, I don't care. If I feel like I'd be interested in getting on a call with you because of like your first couple sentences, like that's the only thing I'm going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, cause your resume is just all about you. And, I don't frankly like care about you before I know if you're going to be able to do the work that we're hiring for this role. So it's like your resume is about you. You doing like value-based work up front is all about me. And so like which one, what I've done for previous roles is like, your resume gets maybe a minute, but then we send you this challenge, like I was saying, whether it's copywriting or it's designing a content calendar or something like that. That's where I'm going to spend legitimately at least 100x more time looking over and reviewing and then going over that on a call with you. It's like the resume, I don't think I've turned in a resume for most jobs that I've had in the past decade, because it's just like you want to lead with that value first. And if you can do that, the other stuff is so insignificant. And it's what differentiates you. Do you have any particular ways you like to deliver that value? Like, is it podcast based? Is it text based? Is it like, how would you do that? And I guess it is specific to what you're trying to do, but what kind of guidelines would you give?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll tell you what I do, but I'll give one other kind of just add on to the note that what we were talking about. The most interesting way to get a response from the decision maker. So you can look on the website, figure out who that person is. Then you can find them on Instagram or LinkedIn. If you want their attention, follow them on either LinkedIn or Instagram. And if it's on Instagram, literally grab your phone and record a video being like, hey, Chris, I love your company. I really think I could bring some value. I would love to send you some work for you to like, see if it were, you just pitch what you would in a resume, literally record a video or literally record a 1-minute voicemail in LinkedIn or in Instagram and send that to the person instead of a resume. The reason I like it is because if it's a video, you just see like the screenshot of the person's face and you have no idea what it's going to be. And if it's audio, all you see is the little audio bubbles. And again, you have no idea what it's going to be. So if you send direct messages via text, it's very easy for me to dismiss it. Who is this guy looking for work? Yeah, whatever. But if you have to if I have to listen to the voicemail, and out of curiosity, you're going to listen to the voicemail. That's a really interesting way of being able to reach out to people. And I even like video now. So like even like prospecting, potential podcast guests, I do exclusive outreach that way. I haven't text DM'd anybody in months.
So I get this straight. You do it from your phone. You just log into like the LinkedIn app or the Instagram app, and then you can send, instead of like a DM text, you send it as just an audio or a video.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I didn't even know you could do that. I'm gonna pull.
Yeah.
Let me pull out my LinkedIn app right now and check that out. That's really interesting. That makes so much sense.
So on LinkedIn, you can only do audio. Instagram, you can do video. But again, it's like they get a DM. They're like, okay, they're scrolling through their messages, and all you can see is like the little wave files and a play button, and they're like, I think I have to listen to this. And the thing I like about it, on top of like being a way to differentiate yourself, like nobody gets those. So when they get them, it's exciting. But it also lets them.
So there it is, everybody. If you want to see,
yeah,
you can just send a message to anybody, click that audio. That's a super smart strategy. I love that, guys. Mike just made you $100,000 if you follow this.
So yeah, that's cool. But yeah, so for me, the way I think about it is I always reverse engineer the customer. So when I offer training, or I'm becoming a marketing agency, or even providing strategy for somebody, here's what I want them to get. Always give somebody something that has at least 10x the value that you charge, or for free that they've probably paid for in the past as your lead in. So let me break that down. So for example, when we were doing the social media training things, we had a bunch of people on the internet that I see them on Instagram ads all the time. They have like here's the 2020 calendar with like 700 different ideas that you can use for social media. Have you seen these? So it's like a PDF. It's got all different ideas. And most people charge $37, $59 because they want that like lead in to say like, oh, okay, I'll capture that 59. And then that person's likely to hire me as their agency after, because I've given them value for cheap. I would just do it for free, because if it's something that they would have paid for and they're getting it, they're like, holy shit, like what else does this guy have up his sleeve? So that I really like. Or giving it, or finding something where like anything that they clearly would have paid money for, send that to them first. And that will stop them in their tracks of being like, if I didn't even have to give you an email, or if I didn't even have to give you a dime to get that first thing, and this is something I would have paid money for, it gives the perception of you have so much more knowledge and so much more value loaded up. And it might just be you have the same knowledge as everybody else, or maybe not, but I really do think that that is like such a differentiator of, this guy's got to be so smart that I have to talk to him and do business with him. And so that's been our strategy all along. We also do it in our podcast. So podcasting is amazing. If you're thinking about it for your business, it's like, who would you want your audience to be? The people that will buy from you. What content can you deliver that will make their lives easier, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples of ones that I've helped companies start. So I was doing some work with Volvo. They were like, hey, we want to get more independent operators buying our trucks, because they have like big rig trucks. It wasn't it was like the truck department. And I was like, then why don't you start a Volvo sponsored like Meet Your Truck Driver podcast? And then it's like you interviewing truck drivers about their like most interesting drives or some of their funny stories. And then that becomes a community for them to all connect. So it's like, you want them to buy your trucks, entertain them when they're on the road, right? If you want CEO's attention, why don't you find out a bunch of stuff that like they would want to know, but they're too embarrassed to ask, and do like 12 to 15 minute micro interviews with people about like, hey, explain how blockchain works, explain how analytics work, and just deliver that to them in a bite-sized thing, because they're busy. They don't have time to listen to long content. So just deliver it in the way that they would want it, in a way that makes their life better or makes their life easier. For me, the way I do it is I bring business owners on and I interview them about their companies, and then I give them free marketing advice. It's what I would regularly charge a fee for if you wanted an hour of my time. But because I get the content, I give the podcast for free. So it helps them. it builds word of mouth and credibility with them and their network. But then other people hearing it are like, wow, these are ideas that I've paid for before. If he knows this, if he's giving this away, what else does he know? I got to talk to him. So it comes from either side, whether it's like written or video or a podcast, doesn't matter what the format is. It's just figuring out how to make your prospect's life easier and delivering it to them in a way that is consumable. Make sense?
That's awesome. No, it makes total sense. And one of the things that's been super cool for me just doing this series has been seeing the pieces that connect through all of these like incredible experts that we've been having on. So like one of the things you're saying connects to what Charlie Hone and Tucker Max were talking about in terms of like their whole strategy is like, if you can give away for free what other companies are charging for, it's like you win. That's the end of it. And that's exactly what you're doing is like, hey, other people are charging for this advice. I'm giving it away for free. And so is everybody going to come to? They're going to come to me. And you could do one free strategy session for 30, 60 minutes, but you record it as a podcast. You could have charged, $500 for that session. You do it for free, but then that could bring you, 2, 3, 4 clients who pay for it. So what do you think it is that prevents people from doing this? Is it like a lack of like thinking outside the box or creativity or just not wanting to invest the time, like feeling like sunk cost?
It's more than anything. Those are some factors, but it's a scarcity mindset. It's the idea that I have to hoard the business and hoard the prospects for me because there's not enough. But the truth is I couldn't tell you. I mean, other than like the big agencies that are out there, like I couldn't tell you who the mid-sized companies in my space are. I could not care less because if I know that if I spend time worrying about them or thinking about them, there's no value to that. It's not moving the business forward. It's not making you money. It's never going to have a return on investment. So for me, I think it's scarcity mindset of like, well, there's only so many customers or there's only so much money to be made, but really it's just playing scared in my opinion. I think creating and getting that in as many hands as possible, the opportunities that creates counter to kind of hiding your data, putting stuff behind paywall. And look, I mean, there is a time and a place, right? If you've got an email sequence to upsell to something else, like maybe you do want to get an email for a piece of content. I'm not opposed to that, but what I would encourage you is make that content so powerful that their like mind is blown that they just had to give you an email. And if you want to charge $50, $100, $200, make sure that they think that should have been 2,000 and not 200.
Yeah.
Deliver it. Sorry. Yeah.
No, please keep going. This is great.
Yeah. So for me, it's 10x the delivery. So whatever they would have paid or think it should have been worth, make sure it feels like it's 10 times that. And then I don't have an opposition to having paid content at the front. It's just like, don't make an ebook that leads just back into them needing to contact you to do work. Like so many, like it's just slack. It's really, really poor. Like I download every single one I get an ad for, cause I'm just like the morbid curiosity. I don't really read them. I just skim through, but like the how to start a podcast, the like this 7 pages will change your life. And you're like, you gave me like 2 basic tips and then basically said, hire me. Like, it's just such a load of shit. I don't know if I can say it right.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay. So for me, it's just make it explosively valuable to them and it'll just leave them wanting more.
And what you're not saying is make a cheap product. You're not saying like, hey, if you want to charge $20 for an ebook, charge $2. You're saying you can charge $20 for an ebook. You can charge $50 for an ebook, but it should have $500 of value. It's like, you don't want to be pulling the lever on the price side. You want to be pulling the lever on the value side.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Right. And I mean, like we teach small businesses how to do marketing. Like our services aren't cheap. But I know that if they come on the podcast ahead of it, I give them some ideas, they test those ideas. So I think the deliverability of content, something I left out, whatever you're delivering, if it's like a leading in with value, like give us your email, download this thing, whatever you're giving away, make it something actionable and make it something that can improve what they're doing within that week. That's how you get people to remember, oh, it was these guys. These are the people I want to talk to. So if you're like, I'll tell you a little bit of our strategy right now is, so right now I know that traditional marketing stuff is not happening. The dentists and the roofers don't want marketing training because they're not operating businesses and we don't know when it's coming back. So for me, it's like, maybe there's ways to innovate on your product. Maybe there's some strategies to pivot. My entire marketing campaign, my entire website, my entire lead flow is all built for something completely different, which is not, is getting, I usually get like 20 to 35 leads through my website a month. I've had 2 in the last 3 weeks, and they were both super unqualified. So it's not like it's not happening. So for me, it was like, okay, rewriting the website, it's going to take a bit of time, re-recording all the videos, explaining the products. I don't even know what the product is, but I know strategy and how to pivot is good for me. So I set an automated DM on LinkedIn to my 3,000 connections and just said, I'm giving away 50 hours of my time to help you pivot or innovate. It's in 30-minute chunks. Here's a Calendly link. Book yourself in. Let's go. And I've had like 19 people book in the first 3 days. Wow. And I've had 4 conversations, and a lot of those conversations have been, hey, these are great ideas. I'm going to try them and hope it works. But I'll tell you, if it works, then they come back for a little more, or it works. And when business gets back to normal, you're on the top of their list. So it's not that everything's going to convert right away, but that's like my new version of value, because I don't have the piece of content I can send out as the lead into my product now. That's all gone. Well, on hold. So for me now, I'm just like, okay, now it's consulting time instead of this video training. You know, so you don't have to have a huge infrastructure. You can just reach out and ask.
Well, hey, and that's what we're doing with this series is we're like, hey, what can we do if people don't have, you know, the funds that they used to have, or at least some people might not? What can we do that's valuable for people? Because it's about building those long-term relationships. So we're like, hey, what if we bring them a bunch of experts who can teach them how to build their businesses, and we'll do this for as much as we can, and hopefully people will be able to take one single idea, use that to earn an extra $1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. Now they're going to be AppSumo customers for life. It's like, you know, we're upfront about it. This isn't a sneaky strategy. It's like, give people value up front. And then if you can actually deliver on that and it's valuable and they trust you and you build that long-term relationship, it's like you've already won.
100%. And I think what a lot of people don't understand about it is you can give away value that somebody takes and says, you know what, I understand this enough and I'm never going to need your service. That's actually one of the better case scenarios. The best referrals I've ever received in my business are somebody that I helped out on the podcast. Hey, have you heard that this tool can help you track your conversions and figure out which patient came from which marketing channel? I didn't know that. Great. So he takes that away. He now understands his business on a way deeper level after a 35-minute conversation. I actually remember the podcast vividly. He wanted to leave. As soon as I told him about the tool, he's like, okay, so I want to go do that now. I'm like, no, please finish. Like, can we finish the interview? Like, he just wanted to go implement it right away. I was like, no, Matt, come on, man. Stay, talk to me. But he sent me 3 consulting referrals, like nothing. Because the next time his buddy is like, oh, I'm having trouble with this, he goes, you got to talk to Mike. You got to talk to Mike now. And he's the only guy you've got to talk to. So it creates, not super fans, whatever you want to call it, but it creates such great affinity for you or your brand that the referral that comes out of it as well. So it all comes back around. You just have to really give as much as you can, be as valuable as you can, and really do it in a way that's like, you can just take this by yourself and never come and talk to me. And if you can deliver it at that level without asking for anything, the amount that comes back is 10-fold, 20-fold.
Yeah. I mean, the value of a good referral is like the value of just doing good work that then earns you a referral. Like the guy who does our Facebook ads, Jack Paxton, shout out to Jack. If anybody needs Facebook ads, check him out. The amount of people I've recommended him to just because he's done a phenomenal job for us. He hasn't asked for referrals. He doesn't say like, hey, if you come across it, he's just done a great job for a long time. And with Facebook ads, I'm like, boom, email intro to Jack. And like that, it's just building these things. Like when you think more long-term for all of this stuff and you think like, how can I deliver value and how can I extend this relationship out for a long time? It's like you're building up so many of these like little small things that then have the potential to have like explosive, unlimited upside for you.
Absolutely. Yep.
What do you think are so I guess when it also comes to that, like that scarcity side, it's also thinking that like you can't give away your valuable content up front because there's like a limited amount of content. Like you only have one thing of secret sauce. And like, if I tell people this, then like, what good am I? Like, how would you overcome that for somebody, or what would you recommend if that's their mindset?
Yeah. So I think the key is remembering this. Everything that you know is available on the internet. That's the truth, right? Whether you, but there's ways to hone that and take advantage of that too. So if you think about, well, this process that I could give away for free, or I could teach people how to do for free, is a big part of what I do. And so I don't want to give that away, because then they're going to know everything. Like, they could find that information out. So if you're the one that gives them the information and then has a package or an offer that complements or supplements that thing, then they're going to be more inclined to do the business with you, because they have trust, because you're the one that gave it to them. If you don't give it to them, they find it from somebody else who's willing to give that one for free. And then if that person has an offer or a product on the back end, they're going to do business with that person. So I think the people that can think about, okay, so how does this piece fit into my product or my service or my offer? So here's the 4 steps that I take you from here to here, from not having a website to having a website, to not having Facebook ads to having successful Facebook ads. And you can tell them about how to scale them, how to test, how to build audiences, how to use lookalikes. But like, can they piece that all together on their own? And like,
And do they have
successful?
time to? Like, do they have a desire to? Yeah.
Yeah, probably not. So I think you have to think about, for yourself, for your business, is like, how do I package that? I'm giving you this because I can take you from no website to website. These are some things, if you're going to do it yourself, that'll really help you. But once they go into Squarespace or Wix or WordPress and they start doing it themselves, there's naturally going to be all kinds of things that they can't figure out. And then guess who they're going to call? You. Or they don't have time and they're going to call you. So here's the key. The key is that some people are going to take that knowledge and be like, I don't need you. This actually solved my entire problem. You weren't going to get that customer anyway. In all likelihood, they were looking for free information on the internet, and then they were able to do it themselves. But the fact that they got it from you makes that potential for a referral later, rather than I learned it from this other guy and I'm going to refer to him. So again, it's like, you're not going to capture every client. It's not how business works. So I think that's kind of a way to like think about getting out of the scarcity mindset. I think that should help.
Yeah. And I remember I was reading, I think it was in Russell Brunson's book, and he was talking about how like there are these different kind of characters that you can play, or these personas that you can have online. And like, one of them is the expert who knows everything, but you can also just be the person who like pieces together a bunch of different things. And you're like, hey, we're on this journey together. Like, I understand this stuff. I might be a couple steps ahead of you. So like, if you have this worry or this fear that you don't know enough, or you're not as good as the people who are the famous people in your space, you don't have to front like you are this expert. You can just be the person who's 5 steps ahead of you, and I can help you. And I've already gathered the resources and kind of gone over these, like avoided these holes that you might be about to fall into. Like, you don't have to think that you're an expert and come across as an expert and think you have to have that persona in order to get clients.
I agree, but don't be the guy or girl who takes the like, well, you don't have to know anything to do any consulting. Like, no, I'm a consultant. There's courses that it's this like brutal loop of like, I'm going to teach you to teach people how to teach. Like, it's this loop of nothing. So, just be cautious.
So how would you find that balance? Because I think that's an important point. I would love to hear you expand on that.
So in my opinion, it's do something and then teach people based on your learnings. That's the key. So you don't have to be miles ahead. I completely agree with that, but you had to have done it to an extent or tried it. Because if you've tried it, and even if you failed every time, you could teach people how to not fail at it without saying, I know the answer to it. But I think it's like, actually take the actions, actually get some experience before you say, I want to be a consultant. Because I think there's a lot of content on the internet. There's a lot of like shady people. We all know who they are. We all see their ads with books in the background. But like, if you don't have any experience with it, then you're going to feel guilty about selling it. And like, that's just a shitty place to be, right? Like, why would you want to go into it being like, I hope they don't find out. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, just get some base knowledge, experiment, test, run some of your own ads. And then with that experience, find people those 5 steps below, say, here, I can actually help you. I think that's the only thing, right?
Yeah. And if you are kind of earlier on, I imagine you could do a lot more of this kind of like free work where it's like, hey, I don't have the experience. I've, read these books, gone through these courses. I think I have a pretty solid understanding of it, but I see you're not doing it. I would love to implement this for you and do it for free for 2-4 weeks so I can
Right.
build up some experience.
Yep.
And now you've gotten that real world feedback. You have results that you can share. You have the experiments you've run, and now you can take that to your next client or even this same client to kind of then upsell and move the relationship along.
Yeah. And look, if someone reached out to me, I had an intern recently helping me with PR. So I was like, hey, go find me a bunch of great podcasts that I'd be a good fit for, that I would be a good fit for their audience. And let's just do some outreach. And for her, it was an unpaid internship. But for me, I wanted to make sure that she had the value. So I reached out to a bunch of my existing clients and said, hey, I'm going to get you on a couple podcasts for free. My intern's going to do all the work. But then at the end of it, she got to say, I've done PR work for brand A, B, and C. And now her resume is hugely bolstered where she had no experience before. So as long as you go into it with honesty, I would reach out and say, hey, I'm going to do this for free, but then I want to leverage you as somebody I've done business for. I want to put your logo on my website. I want a testimonial from you if I do a great job. But you can be upfront about it. As long as you're upfront about it, I would rather know that that's your intent, because then I can find the ways to use you better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think all of the most valuable experience, like the quote unquote resume builders that I've had have all come from doing free stuff because it's like, hey, I don't have a ton of experience, but I think I have some skills on this particular thing. Let me do this for you. And then that leads to one thing that's how I got my job at AppSumo, was just from starting there, one person to the next and down the line. I think that's a really important point. What do you have any kind of, like more specifics on that type of of what you would do for that like introductory piece of work, like or how your intern did that, like how they approached you, or just what you would say for folks?
So I think, like we were talking before, reach out in a unique way so that you
I'm going to
stand
try
out.
that.
That's going to get attention right away. And then I think it's the same thing as marketing as a whole, right? When we think about what marketing is truly, it's who are my customers? What would they want to see or do, or how can I make their life better? What is it that makes that thing happen? And where do they spend their time on the internet? And that's basically the path. So if you find your top 20 people, these are my top 20 people that I'm going to go after. You take a look at them on LinkedIn. You take a look at them on Instagram. You maybe take a look at some of their tweets. Maybe they have a pain point. Maybe they're actively, check the LinkedIn pages and Indeed. Are they hiring for a particular role right now? Do you fit into that role? And then you can reach out and be like, hey, I saw that you were hiring for this. I know hiring takes a little bit of time. In the interim, I'd love to make a piece of content for you, or whatever that thing is that you uniquely individually do. Like there's too many variables because it depends on what your skill set is and what you're trying to get into. But I would say as long as you're focused on making that person's job or life a little bit easier, I think that's the most important thing. And then reaching out in a unique way to get them to give you that shot. Because even if you're offering and it's a great offer, so you coming into my ecosystem and then me having the responsibility of answering your questions or giving you feedback on the thing that you're doing, like it's still work for me. I have to take time out of my day. So I have to still invest, even though you're doing this great thing for free, like there's still work on my end. So it's like eliminate as much of that as you can. And then just reach out in a really unique way. I think that's 100% the way to go.
I think that's a really cool hack for maybe a job that you're not qualified for, but like, going to a company's website, seeing an opening that you would love to be able to do in like, maybe if you got 2 more years of experience and it's like, hey, I know you're hiring for this, but let me do this in the meantime to help fill the gap for you, or maybe set up some of the initial stuff. So when, you do fill this role, they can execute and like no hard feelings. Like, I would love to get a little bit of experience with you.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it too, I think is doing that. Even if it doesn't get you that job, it creates access, number one. And it creates that referral thing. Remember, like we were saying, if you give a bunch of value and that person takes that and they don't need you anymore, but they refer you, like it's the same thing, right? If you do something for a manager or a VP or whatever at a certain company, you deliver them value and they say, hey, you know what, this is awesome. You were really great. Like, I really don't have a spot for you. I don't have any other budget. I can't bring on any freelancers. I'm sorry. If you've got that relationship and they like you, you can be like, hey, would it be possible? Like, do you know anybody in your network hiring? Could you introduce me to people? And then the VP or the manager here calling their buddy who's a manager somewhere else, like, that's like an instant in. You don't have to start at the bottom. You can ask them if they have anybody else. I mean, I think that's a really great way to leverage it, even if they don't have a spot for you at that moment. It's like, you know, hey, if I did a great job, we got along, you know, do you know anybody else that's hiring? I'd love an introduction. I'm really thirsty for work. I'm really like, I'm hungry. I'm a hard worker, as you can see. And they're way more willing to give you that referral if you've got that relationship with them.
Yeah. And to even make it with less friction is just go on LinkedIn, see who they're connected to that you would like an intro to, and be like, hey, I would love an intro to Mike so I could do XYZ for him. And so it's not, because that's a hard question to answer, is like, hey, is there anybody you know that could use Facebook ads? It's like, well, right. I don't know. But if they're like, hey, I saw you're connected to Mike on LinkedIn, I think he could really use this. Yeah, that's super cool. Go ahead.
I think the bottom line to all of this is there's tricks and there's ways of getting attention in a number of different ways, but there's no hacks. Like, you have to put in the work. You have to research who the people are. You have to make their lives easier, and then you have to ask, which is all work. There's no like shortcut. There's no easy way around it. Like, you either put in the work or you don't, but putting in the work, even if it's just, I'll tell you, like, even if the first 20 or 30 or whatever don't come together, it's all moving you in a direction. It's all momentum. And at least you're not sitting back being like, man, what is that hack? I'm going to watch this other piece of content to figure out what's the secret. There's no secret. You just work your ass off, help a lot of people. And I mean, I'll tell you, that's how we've built our entire business, our entire infrastructure. And it's been amazing because we have such great relationships with everybody. Nobody feels obligated to do work. No one feels like they're taking a risk. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, my friend, the president of this company, he loves you. I'm going to hire you. Like, it's instant when you lead with that. That's why I think it's the most important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's like one of the most bitter pills to swallow in all this whole space, but it's also going to be the most rewarding in the long run, is like, and I will constantly catch myself. I caught myself doing it this morning where I'm like, man, I need to do like some more outreach for the Remote Work Academy, like need to bring some more speakers on. And I was just kind of like dilly-dallying. And then I was reflecting on my conversation yesterday with James Clear, where he talks about motion versus action. In motion is just like all the planning that you're doing. And then action is like the actual execution of the thing that's going to get you to your goal. And I was like, nope, like put your notebook away, just start sending some emails, start reaching out to people. Now that I have your new hack, I'm going to start doing it that way on LinkedIn and Instagram. But it's so easy to trick yourself into thinking that like you're taking action. And it's like, even these webinars, it's like, we're bringing people on to give them good content that can help. But if you're using this as just another way to do motion versus action, it's like, go out there after you hop off this, as soon as we wrap up, it's like, pick that one thing you're going to do today and take the action that's going to get you, because these aren't going to get you to your goal. These can help you figure out the best way to do it. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you can know everything and never execute. And that, you know, that's just as good as not knowing anything.
Agreed. Yeah.
So we got a couple questions for you. Let's see. Greg is saying, how could you apply these principles if you're selling a physical product that is reasonably expensive? Greg, if you want to fill in the blanks on kind of what the product is, what the price point is, who your target audience is, but do you have any kind of general guidelines for that?
Yeah, I think when we talk about value, and this is actually something we didn't really get into, there's different forms of value. You know, when we think value, we think information, we think those types of things. And that really is, you know, 75 to 80% of what it is. It's, can I give you some information that helps you get to the next step, that makes you want to take an action? But value also comes in different forms. It comes in forms of motivation. It comes in form of entertainment. So I think if you know what your prospects enjoy, or what entertains them, or what motivates them, or what they find interesting, I think the awareness of around your brand, of creating that content to make them want to follow you on social media, that subscribe to your YouTube channel, because that creates more opportunity to get them in the door. Mm-hmm. So it's a little less that's a little less from the service side. The service side, you can give a service. From a product side, you can make people fall in love with you as a company and the lifestyle and what you're about, and have them then decide that they want to buy that thing from you instead of somebody else. It's more building brand, I would say. Because yeah, not everybody has a product that they could give you the smaller one to upsell you to the bigger one. So for physical products, it's like but it all works the same way. It's like, how can you bring value to the people that you want to be giving you money? And if there's a commonality amongst them, like maybe it's a podcast where you interview all the interesting people that they would find interesting. You build that network, you build that community. Over time, that builds sales.
Mm. Yeah. So Greg just said it retails for $40, wholesaling it to independent garden centers and hardware stores. Well, I imagine there's a lot of content around gardens and hardware and all of that you could probably fit it into. I mean, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. So I'm on top of this company, I actually am the interim CMO of a probiotics company out of California. I stumbled into it because I gave them some advice one time for free, and then they're like, "Can we hire you?" So I'm the acting CMO of a $15 million company, kind of by accident. It's a weird,
It's a happy accident.
Weird situation, but I was like, I can only give you this much time a week. If that's good, we're good. And they're like, all right. But so I think there's twofold. We run a lot of content and ads to create demand. So it's your B2B, but if the consumer were to have interest, or they're going into these spaces and saying, hey, I'm looking for this, I want this thing. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, well, why don't we have that? Maybe we should be carrying it. So you want to create content that brings awareness to the consumer, that creates the demand. So that could be gardening, ways that your product does this, I don't know what it is, but how it makes the gardening better or easier or whatever, creating demand content around that. But I think if you think about it from the retailer standpoint, it's like, what makes their life easier? So for you, it might not be the frontline staff. Maybe it's just the procurement people. Maybe it's just the buyers. And maybe what they want is, maybe you've got a bunch of customers already, and maybe there's a common theme amongst those people of, we wish we had more access to X, or we wish we had, you can ask them too, what they want or things that they would want to learn about. You could even start a podcast by talking directly to those people about the garden industry, the trends. So you could make a podcast about like gardening trends in all 50 states, right? So then you're talking about gardening in different climates and what are the products that you're seeing? What are the like types of flowers that are really popular at different times? Not super generic, but like interview them about, hey, what do you see in the industry? What are like the commonalities you're seeing? What are the on-trend products? Those, and you create a podcast where you're inviting them on and interviewing them and showcasing them, and they're like, nobody's asking those people to be on a podcast. I guarantee it, right? So, but when you're doing it, you're building this relationship. You're giving someone credibility and awareness that never would have had it before. So I think that's a really good idea, interviewing them as a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like the idea of looking at your product in the context of like the user. So it's like, what are they using it with? Under what context are they using it? What are they doing before they're using it? What are they doing after they're using it? Why are they using it? And like kind of building out that profile of like, you have your product, but your product is connected to all of these other nodes in like the customer's life and the other tools and products, alongside it. So being able to think like adjacently and horizontally to see how you could maybe like go a step up, where it's like, okay, maybe not the specifics of your product, but maybe the procurement of the hardware stores or the garden centers, or what are the adjacent industries that we could talk to bring in, like cast that wide net and bring people in, that then you lead them down this funnel towards your product.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's awesome. So what advice would you leave people with? I know we're coming up on time. I want to be respectful of your time and really appreciate you hopping on. But for people who are looking to get that first client, or to make that first $1,000 on this new kind of, maybe they're making a pivot or starting their agency or consulting, like what's the best thing for them to do today so they can take action after we shut this down?
Make a list of 20 people. Go on LinkedIn, find out what job title they're in at the company that you want to do, and just start communicating. See what comes out of it. No, just in general, no. So if you've ever been in sales before, here's a basic framework for sales, right? So If you want one sale, so the worst salesperson with the most mediocre product with the shittiest sales pitch in the world should be able to close 1 in every 10. If I talk to 10 people who have some level of interest, I should get one person to say yes. If you can't do that, you need a salesperson or take some sales training online. But so one person and you need to talk to 10. If you want to get 10 people interested and you know that 10% ratio is in place, that means you need to reach out to 100 people compellingly to get 10 people interested, to get one person to say yes. But just knowing that 95 to 99% of the people are going to say no, that should give you a really good idea of how to structure your outreach, right? Like you're going to have to talk to a lot of people. Expect the no's, but get excited about the no's because the no's are likely going to lead to a yes at some point if you are persistent with it. But you got to take action. You got to move. Think about that person that you want to say yes to you and figure out what their pain points are, right? Is it that team management? Is it time management? Is it I'm bored on my commute because I'm always commuting in and out of the city because that's what on average, that's what that person is doing. And then find out what you can do to make that person's life easier and then reach out with that thing for free.
I love that. That's a great note to end on. And to help light a fire for folks, if you guys do this today by midnight Central Time and you do this, send me an email and I will send you $10 in AppSumo credits. So I'm going to give you my email here. And if you do this, you reach out to 20 people and you show me proof that you did this with timestamps and all that, I'll hook you guys up because I want to incentivize action, not just motion. Mike, thank you so much for joining. This was super cool. So much valuable stuff in here. Something I'm gonna go take some action on today and send some of those either LinkedIn or I'm gonna have to re-download Instagram because I've had it deleted off my phone for about a year and a half, which has been good, but I really love this strategy and I want to give it a try. So I will be maybe I'll give myself $10 in AppSumo credits if I do 20 of them today. Mike, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on. Everyone, let's give him a big round of applause. This was super cool. Tons of value. Thank you very much. And we'll be seeing you guys soon. Thank you, Mike. Take care.
Brother. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.